everyone, this is People and Power. I'm Summer El-Shahat. On today's program, the neo-Nazis in Obama's America.
USA! 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 USA!
We are looking at a country now that could very well face another American revolution.
2 years ago, the election of President Barack Obama was hailed as a turning point in American race relations. The country was said to be entering a new era of post-racial politics on the path to a future of greater diversity and tolerance. But while crowds flocked to Washington to witness their new leader's inauguration, others were refusing to join the party. Racially motivated threats against Obama rose to new heights in the first months of his presidency, and soon white supremacist and neo-Nazi groups were claiming their membership was growing. Last year, filmmakers Rick Rowley and Jackie Sohan set out to investigate whether this meant a racist undercurrent was reasserting itself in America. In the process, they uncovered links between white nationalists and the conservative movement that has since become a force within more mainstream politics. With important congressional elections in a few weeks, it's a good time to look back at that report. Some of the images and opinions you'll see and hear are disturbing.
It soon will be our time. We already have a president who's out to destroy us and what we stand for. I did not elect a communist to run this country. This next one's called Soon Will Be Time. And if we do not take care of it, then we will lose our right to be.
In this shed in the middle of the Arizona desert, the White Knights of America are hosting a festival of white supremacist skinhead culture. Here and across the country, white power groups say they are energized and growing. For them, Obama's election and the economic meltdown are wake-up calls for white America and catalysts for the coming race war. They say white pride is their only defense in an insecure and changing world.
America is in crisis. I'm petrified whether I'm working the next day or not, and this is all we got. This is the last thing we got to stand on, man.
Charles is the lead singer for Stormtroop 16, one of the most popular bands on the Aryan skinhead circuit. He says they give voice to a silent majority that is afraid to say what it really feels about race.
This country and this entire world is full of closet racists who lack the courage to even say they're even proud to be white, because they are sheep and they're being led to the slaughter, man.
Like many in the white nationalist movement, he talks in apocalyptic terms about the future of the white race.
And we have such a huge following of people that are so incensed about this, because I believe that they think that this is the end's coming, man. We're born to hate.
Skinheads are one of the most aggressively violent nodes in a constellation of groups that make up the white nationalist movement. There are an estimated 30,000 hardcore white nationalists and 250,000 active sympathizers in America today, according to watchdog groups. But white supremacist influence may be far greater than these numbers suggest.
They're preparing for battles of the future. And unless we prepare for those battles in the future, we're going to get blindsided.
Leonard Zeskin has tracked white nationalism for decades and recently published a comprehensive history of the movement based on his life's work. He warns that though white supremacist groups may appear to be marginal, they exploit and inflame racial divisions that run through all of American culture, and they are moving from the margins to the mainstream.
Now it's a broader political problem than it was, say, 30 years ago. And so it's a cause for greater concern. There's a sense of white dispossession among a certain strata of the white population. They feel like this used to be their country, they ran it, and now they don't, and they want their country back.
Zeskin maps a network of right-wing organizations that is adapting in order to expand its foothold in mainstream American politics. In recent years, hundreds of new groups and websites have sprung up across the country, looking for issues that can make their racial politics relevant to more white Americans.
Particularly with the anti-immigrant movement, the white nationalists have managed to find a vehicle into the creation of public policy.
White nationalists see the anti-immigrant movement as a bridge into mainstream politics, and ground zero for that movement is here, in the deserts and mountains of Arizona. 6 years ago, right-wing militias began organizing here along the Mexican border. They quickly grew from a few vigilantes hunting for immigrants into a national phenomenon. With the recession, illegal immigration from Mexico has dropped off 60% in the last year, to its lowest level in a decade, but it remains a hot-button issue. In November, one of the largest white supremacist groups in America, the National Socialist Movement, planned an anti-immigration march to the Arizona state capitol. The NSM claims to have 80 chapters across America. We met Jeff Scoop, the movement's new leader, at his hotel.
Arizona's the front lines. We have a massive illegal immigration problem here in the state, so we're here to take it to the front lines.
As we talked, Scoop's men began to organize the caravan that would bring them to their march. Each car was marked with the number 88. In their simple code, 8 stands for the 8th letter in the alphabet. 88, or HH, means Heil Hitler.
America was founded by white men, settled by white men, and this was founded as a white nation, so we've got our nation to lose. They call us the fringe. They say it's a fringe movement, but I think what we're saying is very mainstream. We're standing up for the American people, and there's nothing fringe about that. The membership is really spiked, especially in the past few years. It's more mainstream now than ever before in our history.
And this is our blood banner. This flag is flown everywhere in the United States.
Clifford Harrington was the chairman of the National Socialist Movement before they tried to go mainstream, when they still wore Nazi uniforms.
You want to get a shot of my ribbons?
Tell me about them.
Vietnam, 68-69. U.S. Army, 66-76. Vietnam, Germany, Japan, and Korea. NSM since 1974.
As we approached the state capitol, he started to lead a chant.
No niggers! No Jews! The Mexicans must go too!
Younger members of the leadership quickly silenced him and chose a theme better suited to a mainstream audience.
USA! 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 USA!
We are looking at a country now that could very well face another American revolution. Our forefathers fought and resisted tyranny in this country, just as we stand here today, in defiance of illegals, in defiance of a corrupt system that would just as soon put a bullet in the back of the white man's head. We stand here in defiance of tyranny like George Washington did, like Ben Franklin did, our forefathers. This is America, our country.
See how! See how! See how!
In spite of their swastikas and Nazi salutes, it is clear that the National Socialist language has changed.
Take a look at that beautiful flag!
Take away the Sieg Heils, and they sound like many other conservative anti-immigration activists in America.
We are doing it right. We're putting Americans first. We're taking back our nation, one day at a time, block by block, street by street, city by city. This is our nation, which we built. We are armed, we are free, and if you want our nation, you must take it from us. We are prepared. Thank you. Sieg Heil.
More than anyone else at the rally, J.T. Reddy embodies the link between white supremacist ideology and mainstream conservative politics. J.T. was a Republican precinct committeeman in Phoenix and a candidate for the Arizona House of Representatives. His writing appeared on mainstream conservative websites, and he regularly spoke at rallies with powerful Arizona political figures. J.T. is a former Marine and was also an early collaborator with the vigilante groups that patrol the Mexican border. They call themselves Minutemen, after the citizens' militias of the American Revolution. Here Reddy is in 2004 with Chris Simcox, the founder of the Minuteman Civil Defense Corps.
Chris Simcox, founder of Civil Homeland Defense.
J.T. Reddy, candidate for Arizona House.
J.T. was a rising star in the Republican Party, but after Obama's election, he came out publicly as a member of the National Socialist Movement, which he now proclaims proudly on his license plate. J.T. agreed to meet with us, but he wanted to do the interview out in the middle of the desert, on Highway 88.
What I'm fighting for primarily at this point is the survival of the white race.
J.T. says that white Americans have been dispossessed and sees America teetering on the edge of a crisis in which their very survival is at stake.
Any event which sparks this off, it could be during an election time, it could be the assassination of a prominent leader on either side, things could erupt. Now within the white movement, we call it RHOA, racial holy war. And I do believe in a racial holy war, and I believe that we are already fighting that, except that our side hasn't even begun to fight back yet. So we're trying to awaken our people for survival.
racial holy war. For hardcore activists, it is more than a battle of blog posts and street protests. And the surge in hate crimes, political murders, and assassination threats since Obama's election have spurred fears of an even greater conflagration.
If you look at the potential of violence and the history of violence, the potential is tremendous.
Special Agent Bart McIntyre retired from the Federal Weapons Control Agency, the ATF, this January. As an undercover officer, he infiltrated a ring of white supremacist groups responsible for multiple murders.
I mean, that was a belt buckle I would wear while we were undercover that we bought from one of the Klan rally sites.
He sees a perfect storm of economic and political conditions driving a rise in white supremacist violence.
The economics, Obama being the black president, the Democratic-controlled Congress, is all fueling the fires. The numbers may be small in the U.S., but you know, there is an event sitting out there that could spark the movement, and all of a sudden you could see those numbers increase exponentially.
Special Agent McIntyre is not alone in his concern. Last spring, a U.S. Department of Homeland Security report warned that right-wing extremists are now, quote, the most dangerous domestic terrorism threat in the United States. The report's most disturbing findings concern the movement's attempt to recruit members inside the U.S. military, something that McIntyre witnessed firsthand while working undercover.
I mean, we were dealing with soldiers there out of Columbus, Georgia, and they were stealing military guns and explosives off the military base there. They were supplying it to white supremacist organizations.
Special Agent McIntyre fears that the country could return to the violence of the 90s, when decorated Gulf War veteran Timothy McVeigh bombed the Oklahoma Federal Building, killing 168 people.
Someone's always looking to be the next martyr. A Timothy McVeigh could happen any day of any week.
In December of 2008, Cody Brittingham, a Lance Corporal in the U.S. Marine Corps, was arrested for involvement in a string of armed robberies. In his barracks room, investigators found white supremacist material, a declaration that Barack Obama was a domestic enemy of America, and plans for Obama's assassination. At one point, death threats against President Obama were running at record levels, averaging 30 a day. These numbers have dropped off since their peak around the time of the election and inauguration, but law enforcement around the U.S. remains on its guard for violence from many corners of the white supremacist world.
911, where's emergency?
Somebody just came in and shot my daughter and my husband.
They shot them?
Please, ma'am, please. She's bleeding out of her mouth. Please.
How old is your daughter?
She's 10.
10? Where were they shot?
In the head. In the head.
Are they still there, the people who are there that shot him?
They're coming back in. They're coming back in.
That was the night of May 30th, 2009, at this house in Arivaca, Arizona, where Raul Flores and his 10-year-old daughter Brisenia were murdered. Their alleged killers were Shauna Ford, director of an anti-immigrant Minuteman militia, and her operations director, Jason Bush, who has been linked to the white supremacist Aryan nations. Ford talked of starting a revolution against the U.S. government, and they allegedly planned to rob Latinos they believe were drug dealers to finance their underground activities.
The whole mindset of hate under the guise of fighting illegal immigration, something that we have not seen probably since the 60s or 50s.
Salvador Reza is a lifelong community organizer here in Arizona. He's been battling for years against the anti-immigrant and white supremacist groups that target Latinos in the state.
Their little minds get to the point that they're fighting this battle against the invasion. And in essence, what they're doing is creating the conditions for what happened here in this house. Like, I bet you that little girl played in that trampoline.
There have been 9 high-profile murders by white supremacists since Obama's election, and the pain in the communities they affect is visceral. But these crimes represent only a small part of the white nationalist movement's impact on America as a whole.
We've got to look at a bigger picture than just the narrow problem of racist violence. There are constant pressure on the racial fault line in American life. They want to set dynamite on that fault line.
Exploiting America's racial fault line helps white nationalists impact mainstream politics. It also helps conservative talk show hosts get viewers.
This president, I think, has exposed himself as a guy over and over and over again who has a deep-seated hatred for white people or the white culture. This guy is, I believe, a racist. I feel like President Obama is just saying, you know what?
For years, the anti-immigration movement was the vehicle of choice for white nationalists looking for an impact on public policy.
Why don't you just set us on fire? Do you not hear the cries of people who are saying, stop?
All aboard the Tea Party.
But since Barack Obama's election, conservative media figures have helped launch a new populist movement that white nationalists see as their best chance in decades to cross over into mainstream American politics.
USA! USA! USA!
Calling themselves Tea Party patriots and styling themselves as new American revolutionaries, conservative activists have descended by the thousands on town halls, state capitals, and on Washington, D.C. The Tea Party movement claims it has nothing to do with racism, but at rallies across the country, race is never far below the surface.
Coming to a clinic near you.
And I think the guy's a racist. I mean, he's talking about how he's going to bring this country together. If he gets us any more together, we're going to kill each other.
What's the difference between the Cleveland Zoo and the White House? The zoo has an African lion, and the White House has a lion African.
But do you think Obama is a real American?
No, I do not.
I do believe that he's trying to change the country in his own image, whatever his image is.
A number of white nationalists noticed the Tea Party phenomenon and said, this is something we have to get into. On their websites and in other venues, they started to talk about what they needed to do to push the envelope.
The Council of Conservative Citizens is perhaps the largest and most influential white nationalist group pushing the envelope. The council keeps its membership secret, but counts elected officials among its ranks. It has dozens of chapters across the United States, many of which have organized tea parties. The organization is the descendant of the white citizens' councils, formed to combat the civil rights movement and preserve segregation. Today, its website identifies the United States as a Christian and European nation and opposes integration and race mixing.
What's a racist? And I'm not sure what the term means even. That you're proud of what you are? Well, everybody, I guess, is a racist of some sort.
Gordon Baum was part of the White Citizens Councils in the 60s. Today, he is the Council of Conservative Citizens Director.
Our nose is being rubbed into the fact that Obama's black, and we better all recognize the fact that he's a black man and he's our president. And Mr. White American, you're going to have your nose rubbed in it, and we can do what we want, and we're going to give ourselves all kind of goodies. The last year has been probably our most dramatic in growth, because people are really upset with the direction this country's taken, and then we're getting lots of young people, a lot of veterans coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan that want something done before it's too late.
Let's look at the counselor of the Citizens Council of Louisiana. Martin Luther King, a troublemaker, a liar.
Chip Burley runs Political Research Associates, which has been tracking the Citizens Council since the 60s. He sees a continuum between the overt racial appeals of the past and the Tea Party rallying cries today.
The kind of naked white supremacy that you see in the pages of the counselor are no longer acceptable. And so you develop other ways, coded language, essentially.
There's 3 words you need to sing with me. And those 3 words are, take it back, take it back, take our country back.
Take our country back. Now, what could that possibly mean? Well, our country is a white Christian nation, and the more we diluted our America with those other people, the less it was going to be America. And the idea is always that we have to take back our America from them. And you never have to say them, because the only people being addressed when you say take back America are white people.
At tea parties across the country, it is impossible not to notice that the audience is always almost entirely white.
They invite black speakers to it in hopes of attracting blacks and Hispanics, and for some reason they just turn their back on it and they're not interested.
Gordon Baum says African Americans don't come to the tea parties because black culture is less democratic than white culture.
It's a chief mentality. If Obama's the boss, that's it.
Gordon Baum put us in touch with Brian Pace, the regional organizer for the Council of Conservative Citizens in northern Mississippi, where tea parties have helped with recruiting.
This is our Mississippi website. It's been put online. In July, we've had over 17,000 people come to it. Just like we put another website online called white-pride.org. and it's getting flooded with responses. It's nonstop.
Pace is busy setting up new chapters around the state and runs a side business selling Confederate and white pride stickers and pins, including many with slogans we had seen at Tea Party protests across the country. When Pace canvasses for new recruits, he starts the conversation on the economy.
The biggest issues right now has got to be the economy, jobs, and legal immigration. And legal immigration is not even really a third issue. It's more or less, it's all about the economy. So that's pretty much driving the growth right now.
The town of Ripley just formed one of the newest chapters of the council and organized its own Tea Party. J.D. Meadows is a new council member. He was receptive to Pace's economic message.
My uncle lost his job up here at Benchcraft. So did my aunt when it shut down and moved to China.
Meadows showed us the factories that have been closed down in the last 2 years. He said that the town has watched the government bail out the banks on Wall Street while its local economy crumbled.
Nobody wants to see the large international bankers get richer. It is a struggle. Most people around here, whether they're Democrat or Republican, liberal or conservative, are fed up with the government in some way or form.
We sat down for lunch with the Ripley chapter of the council. We asked the new members about the council's core issue, racial segregation, but got a surprising response from Meadows.
As the Bible says, a house divided cannot stand. The same applies with a nation. If a nation is divided, it cannot stand. The media plays races off against each other when the races should be united for liberty.
After lunch, Brian took us aside and told us that many new members joined with what he calls elementary school politics.
In a way, the council it's about like a college. You know, after you get in and you start reading our beliefs and you start getting our platform, and you'll start growing more and more.
The economy, the bank bailout, and the war get people in the door, he says. Once inside, the council tries to educate them about racial threats to America.
The mixing of cultures, whether it be it could be ethnic, it could be religious, it could be language. We want to preserve the Caucasian Christian culture that's made up the United States and the South traditionally.
America has changed. Tens of millions of whites voted to elect the first African-American president, and tolerance and diversity are publicly celebrated as national virtues. White supremacists face major challenges, but they are convinced that racial identity remains the most powerful force in American politics.
I think it's become more racial. Because of the vote, we're not in a post-racial America. It's becoming more racial. Race has become a bigger issue today than it's been in 20, 30 years.
I think the Tea Party movement is the beginning of a very good awakening, and realize we only need to wake up 10% of the people to win this thing.
As this right-wing populist movement spreads more and more anger and more scapegoating, and more elected officials and media demagogues encourage them, it's more likely that violence will occur.
That protest is the beginning stages of a revolution, and revolution is the only thing that's ever changed the government.
There's two hearts beating in the American breast. One's multiracial, democratic, and there's a white heart, if you will, that is narrow and exclusionary. At this moment, there's a struggle going on in the United States. Both hearts are there. They're both beating strong. And which one will ultimately become dominant, that has yet to be decided.
That's it for this edition of People and Power. If you'd like to comment on our report or anything else for that matter, we'd love to hear from you on aljazeera.net/English. Until next time, bye-bye.